We are now joined by Kevin Harvick, driver of the number 4 Busch Light #YourFaceHere Ford for Stewart Haas Racing in advance of this weekend's NASCAR Cup Series race at Darlington Raceway. We appreciate your time today, and we're going to get to as many questions as we can. In the interest of time, we do ask that media hold your questions to one at a given time, and if we have time, we'll be happy to take follow-ups. We'll now go to the media for questions.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's *1 on your touch-tone telephone if you do have a question. *1 at this time, please. We'll take our first question from Scott Chansey with the Florence Morning News.
Kevin, how are you?
Doing great, thank you.
Good. As the race is started back for the first time in a while, how concerned are you about pit crew communication, since pit crew hasn't had a chance to communicate in the race situation since March?
I'm not really concerned about it at all. I think, for us, we've had a lot of conversations and meetings about how things were going to flow. Obviously, things are a little bit different with the amount of people and where people are. And so, our main source of communication comes from really Rodney and Timmy Petewa, who is my spotter. Those are really the only things that I hear communication from during the race. So, the rest of it is kind of up to them. But as far as my responsibilities and who I hear will be exactly the same as it always is.
We'll take our next question from Jenna Fryer with the Associated Press.
Hey, Kevin, I'm curious what the plan is. Since you guys haven't been on the track, you won't have any practice. Will you guys just unload with last year's Darlington put up? What have you guys looked at in terms of when the green flag goes? What condition will your car be in?
Yeah, well, I don't think you obviously don't know what condition you're really kind of facing, just because of the fact that Darlington last year went into the night. This time it'll be in a relatively warm day in the sun most of the day. So Darlington is a very Darlington track is a very sensitive temperature track. So I think you kind of have to evolve as the race evolves, and you look at last year's stuff. You look at the evolution of the cars as we've gone through the off season and the first part of the season, knowing that you at least get the race on the same tire that you had last year. So you take those common trends, you take the things that we needed to do differently from the last race. You try to blend all those things together, and then just know that most likely you're not going to hit that target of making the car drive perfectly and being able to have adjustments in either direction. So it'll be a little bit tricky adjusting on your car at the beginning of the race, just because of the lack of rubber on the racetrack, and it's a racetrack that really evolves as the rubber gets on the racetrack. And last year it was tough to drive on top of the rubber, so you really had to find different spots on the racetrack to move around. So, as we always do, we want to have a versatile car that can run high, low, and do things that you normally do. But I think that the biggest goal in this instance is to just not be in right field. Try to get yourself be in the ballpark, be able to adjust on it, so that you don't have to have a rebuild and reboot, a few days later. You can do that, but you can't do that during the race. So we're trying to be solid through these first several races, so that you don't shoot yourself in the foot and have to try to reboot in the middle of a race, because that'll be tough. But you're definitely going to have to make changes and evolve with the racetrack as it changes.
Thanks, Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go next to Jeff Gluck with The Atlantic.
Yeah, Kevin, I'm just wondering, obviously, you've done things a certain way your entire career, showing up at the track and having a routine on race day and all this stuff, and now there's going to be so much that's different about it. What do you think is going to be the weirdest thing for drivers to adjust to, or the strangest element of everything that's going on when you guys show up there?
Yeah, for me, it's just going to purely be the interaction with not being able to have the interaction with the people and communication. will be, just drastically different, and, how much you're around people, how close you are to people, and things of that nature. So, I've started races with no practice. I've been in, we went through 9/11 and had races, a race canceled and had things different, but this is just so drastically different, that you have to approach it drastically different with an open mind, to know that there's going to be things before you even get there. You have to know that there's going to be things drastically different than the before, and just not be frustrated with, things that don't go right, things that are different. And, so the routine is different. It's not as different at Darlington as it's going to be, when we actually do start traveling further than somewhere we can drive, because it is a race that we drove to, for the most part back and forth each day. And it is a race that, is typically hot. It's a unique racetrack. So there's a lot of things that aren't completely outside of the box, but the people and your interaction with people is just a lot different. It has been a lot different, not being able to go to the shop, not being able to have meetings and, face to face is just not normal. And part of the thing that I think we've all learned through all this is just your interaction with people is something that you just kind of took for granted. And, and I think as you look at it now, it's like that's the part that you're missing the most. So, there's a number of things that are different, but that's the part that is different for me, because we talk through so many things so well as a group, and you won't have that.
Thank you.
We'll go next to Dustin Long with NBC Sports.
Thank you. Kevin, what are you most curious about this weekend, whether it's on track, off track, or what? What's kind of, in your mind in regards to just kind of being curious about the weekend?
I think as you look at, the world and you look at the way that things have changed over the last 7 or 8 weeks, you see a lot of changes in procedures. You see a lot of changes in the way that we're preparing our race cars, and the way that the guys work at the shop in shifts, and it's just, I could just sit here and go on and on about the way things are different. So, I think for me, it's a different frame of mind that everybody is in, and I think as you look, it's a much different situation than 2008, 2009, when we went through the financial crisis that we were in. A lot of things changed when we came out of that, and a lot of the teams, a lot of the things in the sport, businesses, everybody operated a little bit different, or a lot differently, for the most part, as we came out of that. And to me, the same thing is going to happen here. You're going to operate differently. I think obviously as we go through the screening, getting into the racetrack, the screening during the week, all those things, I think everybody expects right now, because you're seeing, different businesses go back to work, and the screening that they have and the things that they're doing that are required are just, that's the way it is right now. But I think with all the meetings that I've been a part of at home and iRacing, and the way that the teams are functioning, there's going to be some things that come out of the situations that are permanent, and what those things are will start this weekend. I don't really know what it is, or what they will be, but I think this weekend will be the start of a process that you have to kind of look around and say, you know what, that wasn't a bad idea. We did it out of necessity to go into this racetrack and race and put on a show, but is that something that we can carry forward? And I think that question is going to be asked a lot as we do things going forward.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. We'll take our next question from Liz Clark with the Washington Post.
Kevin, thanks for being available this morning. I know that you represent athletes in other sports in addition to your job driving, and I'm wondering, in that vein, are you aware of kind of a special interest that either other sports or other athletes are taking in how things go on Sunday, to see how NASCAR takes this first step? Have you gotten any queries or have any sense of curiosity that eyes are on the sport?
Well, obviously the eyes are on the sport, but we've already been through this. The UFC's already been in the ring. So, our fighter, Donald Cerrone, has already been through, the screening processes. And we had Dana White on my Happy Hours radio show a couple weeks ago, kind of explaining the thought process and why they didn't go sooner, and how the UFC and their world put all the pieces together in order to put their fighters back in the ring. Obviously, they already had a fighter test positive, and how they worked through that. So, there has been some things that have already happened from the KHI management side of things, and how how it was dealt with on the UFC side of things. So we've already seen it with one of our athletes firsthand. So I think as you go into this weekend, obviously, our competitors and our crew guys and everybody who's at the racetrack needs to remind themselves when they leave their house that the world is watching, and our country especially is watching, and we need to make sure that we make all the right moves. And when you look at the procedures and the precautions taken so far by NASCAR, our teams, and just understand that there's a personal responsibility that comes with each one of us to make sure that goes as well as possible. There are going to be some things a lot of things that are right, and there are going to be probably some things that are wrong, but I think that's one reason that everybody's as cautious as they can be leading up to this race, and trying to make sure that we cover all our bases to make sure that we do it as well as we can. So it's it's obviously not a normal situation, but I think our sport is much different than other sports as far as the interaction between the competitors and the way that things function. So, with every driver and every person in that garage being treated like they have the virus, and being compartmentalized and doing the things that it takes to keep our sport safe, is not a locker room full of guys that are getting ready to go throw a ball around or have to have that interaction with each other on a weekly basis. So it's a little bit different, but from our side of it, we've already seen it work, and I think our sport's done a good job to prepare us for this, and we've got 40 guys that need to make sure that they take it seriously from the driver's side, and that whole garage that will do the same, and I think we'll do that.
Terrific. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go next to Bob Pockras with Fox Sports.
Yeah, Kevin, you were talking about UFC, and obviously they did testing before their event. Are you comfortable with the fact that NASCAR is not testing and just doing a temperature check on entry?
Well, I'm not going to get punched in the face by anybody else, or be put in a headlock, or be directly in contact with any of my other competitors. So I think it's a drastically different situation, and I think when you look at the guidelines of entry and exit and temperature checks during the week, and all the logs and things of where people are and who they have interaction with, I think we have done what we need to do, from what fits our sport the best. So it's just a much different situation than other sports that actually have human to human contact and have to be in each other's space and and things of that nature.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll go next to Kelly Crandall with Racer.com.
Thank you. Hey, Kevin. 2 races back-to-back at the same track in about 3-4 days is going to be unique. Physically, at a track like Darlington, how do you think that's going to go racing on a Sunday and then a Wednesday in terms of how you think you're going to feel afterwards?
Well, the thing that I can tell you is the first hot race of the year is always kind of a wake-up call for all of us as we're in the car, and it definitely gets your body's attention. And at this point, you haven't, for me, I'm used to heat training during the summer months, and with all my outside training, we do that in the hottest part of the day outside. And you also wind up in racing shape as you go through the season. But that first hot race is always gets your attention. I think this weekend is definitely going to be warm. Everybody not having been inside the heat of the race car, is definitely going to be, the hardest thing to deal with on the first race. As you go into the second race, it's really just going to come down to how you feel, paying attention to your hydration and the things that you need, leading up to this weekend, through the race weekend, and just, really get back into that recovery mode as fast as you can on Monday morning. So it's the thing about it is everybody should be fresh. As you look at it, we were still pretty early in the season, and then you have, 8 weeks or so that we had, a break. So your body should be fresh and able to tolerate it, but it's going to catch up with you pretty quick if you get behind as you go Monday, Wednesday, or Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday. It's a lot, but I think as you look at it, it's also something that most of us have done before. A lot of times you race 300 miles on Saturday and 500-600 miles on Sunday in the Cup car and the Xfinity car. So I think that part of it will be fine. Obviously, the Wednesday races are in the evening, so the heat will be less of a factor than probably will this weekend. So definitely just got to keep up with it. But you will have some sore muscles and necks and shoulders and things as you go through this first one.
And we'll take our last question for Kevin from Mark Garrow with PRN.
Thank you. Kevin, you talked about the personal responsibility that everybody has going into the racetrack, right, being connected to the event. How important do you think it is that we come away from these first few races without anybody testing for the coronavirus or testing positive for it?
I don't know that is probably the actual goal of everybody is to obviously not have anybody test positive for it. But, I think with the way that everything is laid out, if somebody is tested positive, I think there's a good plan in place to know, where they've been, who they've been in contact with, and the precautions that have been put in place to kind of build those walls so that, if it does happen, you have a good firewall built of trying to keep the people who have been exposed to it, quarantined, and the procedures that have been put in place are there to be able to deal with that. So, I think it's something that could happen. And I don't know that it's definitely not a make or break situation. I think building in the possibility of that happening is in the plans and in the procedures and understanding, that could happen before we get started was built into everything. So, I can't tell you whether it's going or not going to happen, but I can tell you that the plan is in place in case it does happen to make sure that we take the precautions that we need to keep it from spreading as much as possible.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
At this time, I'd like to turn the call back over to Amanda.
Yes, Kevin, thank you for joining us today.
No problem. Thank you, guys.